Good morning, Claire. I'm glad you could join me. So to start things off, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Of course, and lovely to meet you as well, Adrian. Well, I started my career in HR many years ago now. Always had a love for organisations and what made organisations tick. So I left university having achieved my master's in organisation studies and then spent the next 10 to 15 years working predominantly for large corporations, most of them based in the US, and really just working through all the different channels that affect people. So working through your usual recruitment, training, redundancies, restructuring, change management, program management, and in the later years of my career, working and moving into the reward space. So looking at what we can give people to motivate people to want to come to work, and obviously how to keep the talent that you have in place.
Okay, very good. So coincidentally, my wife was a HR professional and executive for 20 plus years. So I'm familiar with
Oh,
the space
yeah, yeah, good,
and the
yeah.
challenges there. She was focused in healthcare. So that was a very unique kind of experience there in healthcare with
I can imagine.
hospitals and
Yeah, yeah, a little bit different to my background. I started in data services and then moved into technology and then into communication space, and then latterly I moved into the retail space. So I've done the whole spectrum from the fast end, if you like, to the nitty gritty end of dealing very much more with specific people issues rather than trying to fast track big projects through the organization.
very cool. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I've spent 24 years with HSBC,
Mm-hmm.
um, primarily focused in consumer finance and retail banking. In 2018, I left, went off to do consulting and advisory work, and did that for a couple years, focused both in the fintech space and also with large financial institutions,
Uh-huh.
strategy, development, and then a lot of with larger financial institutions, a lot of work in the risk space. Um, and then after about 2.5 years, I was approached and offered a position with Citi as the chief retail or the chief risk officer for the U.S. retail bank. And so I went off to do that. I did that for just over a year and a half, and then returned to consulting and advisory. And it was shortly after that, a couple months after I'd left Citi, that Travis McGregor, the CEO of SLC, reached out and said, "Hey, we'd like you to kind of join as an advisor, and then maybe
Mm-hmm.
actually take on a bigger role." And so here I am now, the chief product officer and an executive director for SLC. So that's kind of how I came to this party, so to speak. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask you, so what attracted you to SLC as an investor?
I think the space that you're dealing with is really interesting, and particularly again from a people point of view. Businesses are always talking about how to future-proof their business, how to keep on top of technology, and not let the pace of technological change overtake everything. To then put businesses in a position where they physically can't move and they're frozen in what they're doing, fighting battles every day, and simply not achieving just the bare minimum to get themselves the revenue streams that they want. And like I say, I've worked a lot in the technology space, and I'm lucky, if you can put it that way, to be married to someone who's always been in the technology space as well. So we've always had very interesting conversations about how the people piece marries with the technology piece. And it was really his interest in the business that then sparked mine. And like I say, really, it's understanding about how something that is so simple, it seems like such a simple idea to start with, can drive so much process change in terms of business securities, in terms of data security, and in terms of just simply pushing processes through quickly and allowing businesses to literally future-proof themselves very, very quickly on something that everybody carries around with them day in, day out. I don't think you can count on one hand now the number of people who you walk around and don't have a phone in their hand. It's a daily thing. It's the same as brushing your teeth in the morning. Everybody has their mobile phone on them. So if you've got a SIM in there that allows you to generate simpler transactions, better processes for your organization. What a great idea.
And to your point, it's not even something that's, exclusive to the developed world. It's, the penetration of mobile devices and cells in the emerging markets is huge. And there it takes on even more importance because it's used not only as a primary means of communication, but also as a means to financially transact.
Yes, exactly. And again, I think it's that piece around we're looking at how businesses have shifted so much in the last 20 years, 30 years even, and how everybody is now very much global, whether you're a very small business that's working 5 to 10 people, or whether you're a huge organization that's always had opportunities in Asia, in Europe, and over in Africa as well. I think the fact, like you say, that everyone now, it doesn't matter where they come from, what their background is, what country they sit in, what even level of income they have, the SIM and the mobile phone is a piece of equipment everybody has. And if businesses can tap into that, the opportunities in terms of expanding your business and keeping safe transactions across all those global borders is just absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely. Excuse me. So, we at SLC have been largely focused as we are beginning to launch this, talking and working with folks, primarily, financial and transactionally based and whatever. But given your experience kind of on another side of things, although related to tech, human resources, I'd wonder if you've thought about any potential kind of use cases and applications within really more the people space for this type of technology.
We were having conversations earlier on in the week in terms of how you could apply this in the people space. And I think from my perspective, it does come from the transactional end in terms of not just allowing people to do their daily business, but allowing an organization to clear out a lot of the noise and clear out the base processes that everybody has to do. Doesn't matter how fast technology goes, there are certain simple principles that you have to do. And it's usually in that sweet spot where finance interacts with HR. So it still very much has that finance angle. But if you're looking at simple account transactions, you're looking at simple internal organization processing, for example, just people sending in invoices, work with clients. If you look at just a sales desk, and how many times they will have invoices coming in from a client that they need to process and send back out again. Allowing a business to have that traceability of where it went to the client, what the client returned in terms of their information, and rubber stamping the whole process all the way through is a really great place to try and tie up some of those loose ends. And I think from when I was working, particularly in the sales space, we had significant issues with invoices that would get sent to a customer would fill in their information, send it back, and it would either get lost, or when it would then go back to the customer and say, we have fulfilled your order, the customer would say, that's not what I ordered. If you've got the traceability to say, I can see that you received the document, this is the person that touched it, this is the person that filled in the information, and again, it's literally sat in their hand, you can identify it as them. It's so much easier to sort out any of those issues and to bring down those fraudulent transactions as well from either end of the business. So I think for me, it's a little bit more about protecting the two pieces of HR. So in HR, you tend to sit, I like to think, in the center of the organization. You're working very much with your employees, trying to make sure that they're enjoying where they work, they want to come to work, and they're delivering what you've asked them to deliver. But you're also making sure from a business perspective that you have the right type of employee in the first place, and that they are working effectively for you, and they're not, for want of a better word, wanting to sabotage any part of your business. So it allows you to do both pieces. It allows you to tidy up the processes from the friendly side of HR, but it also allows you to target any specific issues. So if you have a fraud case, or you feel, for example, you have a team that perhaps you have restructured or you're planning to restructure, and they're starting to feel really quite upset with the business that this is happening to them and they're taking it personally, you can get some bad reactions from those individuals, you don't want them to have the ability to start to undermine what they've been doing on a day-to-day basis. If you can track everything from start to finish, you've got the ability to either stop it before it happens, or you've got the ability to pick it up at the point you've recognized that and say, I can prove that this was this team, or I can prove that this was this individual, and you can resolve that issue much, much faster.
Absolutely. Great insight. So you hit on a point which, triggered something in my mind, because I just read an article recently, short thing, on the apparent fraudulent application and hiring of primarily technical staff by companies that were in essence North Korean, and being facilitated by kind of recruiting companies who were not really recruiting companies, but agents of these foreign governments, who would apply for these jobs, go through the entire process, interviews and all that stuff. And then, these positions were basically being filled by, technology folks, programmers, developers who were based in North Korea with the intent of conducting corporate espionage. So this was one that I, thought, well, again, if we had the ability to identify who somebody was through the SIM, and not only that, know the location, or in this case, right, if it's being done by somebody who's kind of a broker slash, whatever in the middle, knowing that, well, that's not really a person, that's some entity that is acting as people, and it's really not. And then being able to use those things to do other, other aspects of it, particularly, apparently there was even actually supposedly interviews, right, that were conducted. And so somebody was on the other end of that camera, but, it obviously wasn't the person who ultimately fulfilled this position. So, that as well seems to me to be a potential application. But one other thing is, given your experience on the reward side, on the benefit side, do you think that there's some application here where, as you've suggested, maybe something like this takes friction out of some of the, the benefits programs and the benefit, having to access benefits and things like that?
Yes, definitely. And again, I think it's that point you're making, which is, you can receive information from somebody, but unless they're really now very much in front of you and you can shake their hand, you're not necessarily sure you're talking to the person that you think you're talking to. And it would be certainly very useful when you've got a large group of employees trying to access a huge amount of data that, again, is very personal to them, very relevant to them, in terms of whether they're going for medical care or dental care, what pensions, how much they're trying to put away for savings for themselves, is something that everybody, I would like to think, spends a little bit of time on and is very important to them. And if you've then got an ability to say, well, actually, we can shortcut all the processes because we can understand that the information is coming direct from you, I can identify that the patterns happening belong to you, then we can make that much faster for individuals, which reduces the frustrations I think people have a lot of the time. Particularly when it's onboarding processes, we send out so much information to someone when they first join a company, and a lot of the time it is duplicated, that you can get halfway through all of that and you really don't want to do it anymore, and you haven't even started working for that business yet, and you're already thinking, I don't want to do this. You want people to want to join, hit the ground running, and turn up on day one. And I think that would allow businesses to certainly make that process faster, but also give people the security that they know that it is their data that's very definitely going into the system, and that the people on the other side, whether that's going out to your benefit consultants or your benefit providers, are also being able to make sure that they can store that data effectively as well. So I think you've got the opportunity to work with quite a few third parties here as well, in terms of those specific providers, and say, look, we can make this better for you as well. You can walk into a business and offer them your benefit platform, and talk to them about how your processes are faster, your processes are more secure, and those individuals are going to have that security that any exchange of information is very definitely person to person and not person to unknown entity that could be anywhere else in the world.
I've personally experienced over the last couple of years, one when I joined Citi, and And then recently, when I was doing contractor work for a large um, consulting firm, which was then dual onboarding both with them and a large financial institution client, and the back and forths and verifications of
Mhm.
this and that, and
Absolutely.
it's literally, I think, at Citi when I was still answering questions with their third party employment verification firm after I'd already started there, right? And
Yeah,
it was like,
exactly.
why,
Yeah,
why are we doing this, right? Why
yeah,
is this going on? So I
yeah.
definitely understand there's a lot of friction in that space, and the complexity of onboarding these days is phenomenally different than it was, probably even 20 years ago, probably 10 years ago. It's just, and it's no longer companies doing it. It's companies who employ, potentially multiple third parties to do
Yes.
various pieces of it, right?
Uh-huh.
Particularly in the financial services space, you then get into fingerprinting and drug testing and
Exactly.
all kinds of stuff.
Exactly.
So becomes very complex. So yeah. Well, this has been wonderful. I think it's a great perspective that you bring, given your experience on the people side of the house, and not something that we necessarily think about all the time, as we're kind of primarily transactional and financial focused and authentication. So it's been great to talk to you, and great to hear your views and visions and what attracted you to SLC, and look forward to having more conversations.
Lovely. That's great. Thank you very much, Adrian. Thoroughly enjoyed it.